Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special mock draft edition of Offsides and Out of Bounds. I'm Drew Patrick, and joined with me, as always, is Mr. George Tubby Schmidt. Tubby, it's Cleveland Christmas.
It's Cleveland Christmas, Drew. It's what we do. It's what we live for here in Cleveland, and I'm excited for it. Again, I don't think any amount of draft picks or anything that we will get in round one will help Cleveland and their misery, as I see us, no matter who we get, even if it's our Lord Jesus Christ himself, the Browns will still only get 4 wins this season.
Oh, wow.
That's just me being
very pessimistic compared to last year at this time.
Yeah, I've learned a few things. Let's just say I've learned.
So the way this is going to work is I've compiled a mock draft because I don't sleep. And we're going to go through my mock draft, and Tubby, you're going to critique my picks, either not in agreement or just fight me on all of them like I expect.
Yep.
We'll start the first pick of the NFL draft. We all know what it's going to be. It's going to be Joe Burrow to the Cincinnati Bengals, number one overall. He's an Ohio kid coming off probably the greatest season for a quarterback in college football. Broke records, won a national championship, and will be the first overall pick.
Yeah, I agree. Here's the thing, though. I don't really they're taking him, but I don't really know how bad Dalton is. So I don't know exactly how quickly the Bengals will be to rush Joe Burrow to the field.
Look, I think especially the way this offseason is going to be, I think they keep Andy Dalton and let Andy Dalton start that year and let Joe Burrow get his feet wet in the NFL, and then by mid-season, I think he'll take over if we have the full season.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it's a truncated off season, and then they rush to start games in September, then yeah, I totally see them starting Andy Dalton, and then maybe by Thanksgiving you might see Joe Burrow taking the field, simply because it takes that much time just to get your line back to some type of order where they can protect the quarterback. And the worst thing you can do is take your number one overall quarterback, this bright, shiny new Corvette, and run them right out there with no type of insurance plan.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's anything that Cleveland knows, that's what we do, because it happened to Tim Couch.
We'll see if your brothers in Ohio will do that to Burrow. I think the second pick is pretty much set in stone. People are going to say the Redskins may trade out of that pick, but look, with Ron Rivera there now as the coach, you can bet your butt he wants a world-class pass rusher from that school on the flag behind Tubby. It's going to be Chase Young with the second pick of the NFL draft to the Washington Redskins.
No, it won't go right. Okay, never mind. This is too hard. But yeah, Chase Young, number 2 overall, definite game changer, game wrecker, somebody that they're going to have to plan for, they're going to have to double team for, and that's coming right out the box. I mean, out of anybody in this draft right now, Chase Young is the most NFL-ready player, period.
He's going to be the most right-away impact player for any team, and it's going to be Washington.
Yep.
Number 3 is the Lions. Look, in my mock drafts, I don't do trades, but I would be surprised if the Lions are actually the team to pick with the third. I think they're going to trade back realistically with either the Dolphins or the Chargers to go up for a quarterback. But as it stands right now, with the third pick, the Lions pick Jeff Okudah, cornerback. That's 2 straight Buckeyes off the board. They need a cornerback because Darius Slay does not want to be there. Is not going to be there.
Yep.
So Jeff Okudah, who a lot of people are saying could be as good as a man you know in Cleveland very well, the last Ohio State cornerback that went this high, Mr. Ward there. I think Denzel Ward, that's the comparison for how impactful a player Jeff Okudah could be, and I agree.
Yeah, Ohio State has done really, really well at producing year after year 3 things. 1, defensive linemen. and that's basically because of the family Bosa. 2 corners, their secondary has always been lights out, and 3 has been wide receivers.
I'd agree. With that, Ohio State, they have probably the best defensive line coach in the country, in Larry Johnson. He knows what he's doing. At Penn State, at Ohio State, he's always bred outstanding defensive linemen and defensive players. And Jeff Okudah, not a defensive lineman, a cornerback. They found themselves some great cornerbacks at Ohio State. Moving on to number 4, the Giants are on the clock. Look, they keep saying they're going to trade back, and a rumblings that we've heard is they could potentially go offensive tackle here. You need to protect a young quarterback. You need to let Saquon Barkley have time in the backfield to be able to do the things that he wants to do. An offensive line makes sense. However, Isaiah Simmons is on the board. And Isaiah Simmons might be the best athlete and best player not named Chase Young, who is the most NFL ready. You can play him anywhere on the defense. So that's why I have Isaiah Simmons, linebacker, Clemson. You can play him wherever. He's athlete. You just put him on the field. He's going to do a lot. This is also a team that has Jabril Peppers, who was what a lot of people thought Isaiah Simmons coming in, what Jabril Peppers could have been. He's not that yet, but if you have 2 of those types of athletes, this was a slow Giants defense with not a lot of true athletes on the field. If they get a guy like Isaiah Simmons, I think that will help in the long run. The tackle will be tempting, but I think at the end of the day, Simmons is the pick.
See, that's the hard thing, especially when you're picking top. And the only reason I know this is because Cleveland has traditionally picked within the top 5 picks every year because, well, we're Cleveland and we're that bad. And, you know, you look for the big money guys at 1 through 5. You're looking for that splashy quarterback. You're looking for that great hands wide receiver, and you're looking for that the difference maker on defense. And if those aren't your needs at 1 through 5, it almost doesn't make sense for you to pick there. It almost makes a lot more sense for you to trade out and get more picks to get more assets that you need, such as, you know, like your lunchbox guys, get your offensive linemen, get your, you know, like your linebackers that aren't, I don't know, like game changing, but just key pieces that you need. Yeah, you're solid pieces, which you can find in picks 15 and later, you know, within this draft. And I don't know, it's a hard spot for New York, but if I'm a New York fan, I would say fill my need before make a splash. You know, and
they have a lot of people anywhere on that defense will be a need.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can see that. But, I mean, if you can still get like 2 or 3 more picks out of it, how much, you know what I mean?
They've already said they're in business trading back, and they could very well. I just don't do trades in my mock draft.
Well, that's fine. I mean, why do extra work?
It's just too complicated to try and put trades. With the 5th pick, the Dolphins are on the clock. I really think it's going to be a quarterback here. There are rumblings, like I just said with the Giants, of an offensive tackle going here, and then the Dolphins picking perhaps the player that you don't like very much. We figured out last week, and Jordan Love later with one of their first picks. But as of right now, I have Tua Tagovailoa going to the Dolphins here at 5. It's going to be, if they pick a quarterback here, it's either going to be Tua or Herbert. Those are the 2 names that the Dolphins are circling around. Herbert's gaining some traction, though, so it could easily be Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I like Herbert over Tua. And it's not like, okay, so Miami, I think, is more set up for an atypical quarterback. Not necessarily a white quarterback, but like a classic 6'3", 6'4", tall guy, stands in the pocket, makes your throws. That's more Herbert's style. Tua can do all that well. His size is a little bit, he's in there, but not really in there. And then when you look at his durability and the way Miami's line has been set up, they're not the strongest line either. So he's not going to be able to take that many hits.
That's why you got Ryan Fitzpatrick still there.
Right. But again, I mean, if you're Miami, you still want to win games, right? So if I was Miami, I would go Herbert, who appears to be a little bit more durable. Does he have the escapability that Tua does? Absolutely not.
So
But
one thing I've noticed with the Miami Dolphins is if the Dolphins want a quarterback in the draft, no matter what, they're not going to get that quarterback.
yeah,
It goes back to when Miami had the first pick, they picked Jake Long over Matt Ryan. The team wanted Matt Ryan. They didn't take Brady Quinn and took Ted Ginn a while back. Granted, Ted Ginn's still in the league, just not with
Miami.
Dolphins. Brady Quinn, we all know what happened to him. He's an analyst now on Fox, so that's where his pro career went. And ultimately, I think Herbert is more likely at this point, but I think the smarter move would be Tua at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like the offensive coordinator, I think, and the head coach really has to look at, okay, which one really fits our offense? What are we trying to look like? What is our identity? You know, and if they're going with more of the classic Miami look, then Herbert's your guy. If you're going and trying to play catch up, you know, and they want to be more like, say, Kansas City or Arizona or Seattle or any of those guys, then yeah, you take Tua, you know, and you play catch up.
And I think also we've seen history with Miami. If you have any injury concerns at all, they're not gonna pick you.
No.
A la Drew Brees.
Mm-hmm.
There's another quarterback that could have been a Dolphins quarterback that they said, nah. So at number 6, it's the Chargers. They're going to pick whatever quarterback was not picked by the Dolphins. It's good.
Yep.
So for me, I have Herbert down, Justin Herbert. He's a West Coast guy, so I think with LA, the Chargers could get a guy like Herbert. You're replacing Phillip Rivers. It's going to be a difficult task. Granted, they don't have a fan base as they did in San Diego in LA, because half of those fans jumped off when they made that move. But I think LA could be a fantastic spot. Who's the starting quarterback right now in LA? It would be Tyrod Taylor, and Tyrod's already done that transition with a quarterback a couple of times.
I feel bad for Tyrod. I really do, because he's a good dude, and he's a hardworking dude, and he's a solid dude. He doesn't see the entire. My biggest knock on Tyrod is that he doesn't see the entire field. He just doesn't, you know. So you got all your plays, all your passing plays going to the right side of the field, you're golden.
Yeah.
You know, but if you're trying to find the open guy on the left side of the field, Tyrod's not going to see him.
And moving on to pick number 7, it's the Carolina Panthers, and this is really kind of my first disagreement with a lot of the national. Their biggest need is cornerback. So a lot of people have them going defensive tackle here, a lot of drafts. I think this is a team that could trade out, or I think this is a team, the Panthers, if the Lions trade out of 3 for 5 or 6, the Panthers could try to take the Giants spot to get Jeff Okudah, because cornerback's their biggest need. I have them going with C.J. Henderson, the cornerback from Florida. He's a solid athlete. Again, do not be surprised if they try to trade up to snatch Jeff Okudah from the Lions.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that. I'm not going to fight you for it.
At 8 is the Cardinals. It's a young quarterback there. They have some weapons now with DeAndre Tompkins coming in and Larry Fitzgerald still there. So that's a scary – granted, Larry's not the Larry of old, but it's still Larry Fitzgerald. He's still effective. That's a good wide receiver duo to have. They need to protect that quarterback. I think the best tackle in this draft is Tristan Wirfs from Iowa. I think they pick him up at 8.
Okay.
Don't
I'm
disagree?
a, no, why not?
Wirf
Let's
is a
do
guy
it.
who can move the most too out of some of the top picks here. And you're going to
Right.
have to in Cliff Kingsbury's offense. Moving on, the first Jaguars pick. Look, what are the Jags known for in the draft? Having good players just fall to them,
Right.
no matter what. It happens. Derek Brown, the defensive tackle from Auburn, is just going to fall to them. They've lucked into picks. They do have a need at defensive tackle, so I think it fits there too. Not only do they get possibly the best player available at the time, but also a need. I think it's a match made in heaven there to go for the defensive tackle.
Yeah. And, hopefully he can help them pack their bags and move to London as they turn into the London Jaguars.
Hopefully he stays too, because all of their stars are looking for the exit.
Well, I mean, I don't know. That's the thing with Jack. Like, they are the most bipolar, AC-doocy team ever. And, like, they'll catch fire for, like, one season and be super good and be like, who the heck are these guys? And then they'll turn around and lose every single game for, like, the next two seasons. And they'll be selling tickets with, like, for $8 and two beer chips. You know what I mean?
A couple years ago, they were literally a couple of plays away from the Super Bowl, and now here they sit with the ninth pick. At pick number 10, it is the Cleveland Browns. On the board, look, Cleveland has issues at the offensive line.
Yep.
I think they find or try to find their next Joe Thomas. They made a great free agent in Jack Conklin earlier for your right side. Get a left tackle now. I think Mekhi Becton, the tackle from Louisville, is a perfect pick here. He's a big body. You're going to put him in that spot. I think he helps protect Baker's blind side. I think that's the pick. Unless
Yeah,
they
isn't
trade
he
back.
already like at 325 or something like that?
He's huge.
I remember seeing this kid and I'm like, wow. Like, he'd be really good and he's really athletic for being such a big guy. And that is a lot to move. My only questions on him are his hand speed and his first jab step. I don't know. What I'd really like to see is him moving I don't know, like at least he needs a decent coach is what I'm saying, like to step up from the next level. Because these defensive ends are going to come at him so fast. And if they're able to get where their team practicing again and he has to face Myles Garrett every single day, day in and day out, he's going to get better. But if that doesn't happen, his progression into an NFL left tackle is going to be severely stunted. And I worry about his weight. I worry about him ballooning up, you know. I hope, but I also think with the way that Di Podesto thinks and the rest of the front office, I can also see them bailing out of this number 10 spot. If there's still a couple of key players left on the board at 10, that's what it basically comes down to is who's left over at 10 and what price are the other teams willing to pay to get that number 10 slot, because I still think you can get a quality offensive tackle later in the draft.
So there are two more offensive tackles I have taken in the first round that they could easily trade back for, especially if someone wants to move up to try and start that chain for receivers. I don't think it'll happen, though, because this is a deep receiver draft. You can get receivers down through the draft, but if people are in love with Judy or CeeDee Lamb, any of those, I could see them moving up into that pick. Or if a quarterback, say, didn't get picked and the Dolphins or the Chargers throw a curveball, this is where someone could move up to try and grab one of those top-tier quarterbacks. Moving on to pick number 11, that is the Jets, Jets. For the Jets, it's going to be tough, man. You have to resist the urge to draft a receiver. as I just mentioned, it is a deep draft for that position. You have to protect Sam Darnold. It has to be done. And right now, the way I have it with 2 of the last 3 picks being offensive tackles, you got to pull that trigger. Jedrick Willis, the tackle from Auburn, that is the guy I think they go with here at this pick at 11. It's going to be tough to not pick CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy, but they have to do it.
Yep. Somebody's got to start it. Why not them?
And I think ultimately it's the better pick. You can get a really good receiver. This is a unbelievable draft for that position. You can get a great receiver who will be an impact in the 2nd or 3rd round. I truly believe that. Moving forward to pick number 12, it's the now Las Vegas Raiders with their first pick.
Are they actually going to play in Vegas this year, or do they still have one more year in LA?
They're in Vegas.
They're in Vegas now? Okay.
They left Oakland. They are in Vegas. The Las Vegas Raiders, I think they start the chain, though, on receivers. Look, Mike Mayock and John Gruden, they love themselves some great speed players. They need a receiver. Derek Carr needs someone great to throw to. They're going to get CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma. I feel like CeeDee Lamb was a deep threat. He caught everything that was thrown to him. Jalen Hurts could literally just toss it up to him this year in the college season, and he'd make a spectacular play. If you can get that kind of player on your team to be a star in a Las Vegas type atmosphere, I think CeeDee Lamb would work.
Yeah, I just – the whole thing about Las Vegas just worries me. You know what I mean? Like, I know these guys are professional and all this stuff, and they're going to show up and do their job. But, like, a team in Las Vegas, I feel like there's just so much distraction, dude. Like,
it has worked for the hockey team. Granted, hockey and football are very different atmospheres for their games.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
I'd be interested to see what tailgating at Las Vegas is, though.
Oh, my word. I don't – I mean, like, because I know what it's like here in Cleveland, okay? And there's a few establishments here in town that will bring out their female entertainment, if you will, and they will host tailgates, which can get pretty lively at times. So
that's just Cleveland. Think of Vegas.
Yeah, and that's just Cleveland. So I don't know. I want to see what the new I haven't seen what their new stadium looks like. I've seen renderings, but I haven't seen it finished. I don't know if it is finished or if it's.
I don't know if it's finished. I'd have to double check on that.
Yeah.
Pick number 13 is the 49ers. I really feel like they're going to trade out of this pick. They have those 2 first-round picks. They don't have really mid-round picks. So they could be a very big potential spot to trade out. I think John Lynch even said, we are open for business at 13. So expect them to trade out. But again, I don't do trades in my mock draft. So as of right now, I think the 49ers, a player they could add to make them even more deadly is another receiver. I think Jerry Jeudy from Alabama, another player who I feel like every time he caught the ball, he scored a touchdown this year, could be a great fit for them, for Jimmy Garoppolo to have another speed weapon on the outside for them. I think he works very well in San Francisco. It's either going to be Jerry Jeudy or on my board still is Javon Kinlaw, the defensive tackle from South Carolina. They do have a need at defensive tackle. That could be the other pick. But I think they salivate over Jerry Jeudy, and especially because CeeDee Lamb just went. If they don't trade out, they go right for the receiver.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. That sounds like a legit. Because, I mean, obviously on the defensive side of the ball, San Francisco is not looking for any help. They're good.
Yeah.
They got pretty much everybody returning. So they're good. Mm-hmm. But, to have a couple other pieces for Garoppolo, I can't believe I'm saying that, for Jimmy G to throw to. Because, Jimmy G's going to tear you apart? Question mark? Like, am I really saying that out loud?
Got the Super Bowl. Granted, he didn't have to throw a lot to get to the Super Bowl.
No. But, defense wins championships. That's what Dad always taught us, right?
Looking forward, it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They had a busy week, of course, trading for a wrestler, giving up a 4th-round pick for a wrestler this week. So I think in terms of offensive weapons, they're fine. They don't need to pile on to the receiver. But I do think they need to bolster up that offensive line. Andrew Thomas, they tackle from Georgia. Every mock draft that I looked at to compare mine to, literally they all said this same pick, Andrew Thomas. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to disagree with those experts, and I'm going to put Andrew Thomas here as well.
Okay.
I think when you look at it, they do need to improve in the defensive backfield. I think their deep backs need a little improvement. That could be the other pick here, but I really think why disagree with what literally everyone else is saying.
Right. Now, here's my question with them. Okay, are they going to actually run like Tampa Bay's offense, or is Tampa Bay going to just run like a modified New England Patriots offense because they have the great TB12?
I think you can run Bruce Arians.
Does Tom bring like all of his favorite plays from Billy Belichick to like unleash?
Bruce Arians is a very good offensive coach. I think you could have Brady's going to throw more deep balls, I think, than he has in any seasons past, because that's Bruce Arians' offense. But I think they run his offense. I think Bruce Arians is a stubborn enough guy to make sure his offense is the one running.
I don't know. I think Tampa Bay wasn't ready for what they got because Tom Brady's turning into be a little bit of an off-the-field issue. I mean, the guy was out there working out in the park. He had the cops called on him. Did you hear about this?
I did hear about this.
So he's out there trying to catch a workout, throw some balls, whatnot, in a park working out. And, some Karen from her big bay window saw him out there working out. Like, oh, he's not supposed to be out there. Called the cops on him. Cops showed up and said, excuse us, Mr. Brady. Could you go home and quarantine like the rest of us? Poor peasants.
You don't get Tom Brady exempt. Moving on.
Okay.
Shall we? So, yeah, Tampa Bay is going to be fine, whatever they do. That division is
garbage
to be tough.
Yeah.
Is the Broncos at 15? And the Broncos are a bit of an enigma. I think they go receiver, though, because of the couple before. Again, last two out of the 3 picks have been receiver. I think they add on to it. And I think the receiver that most catches their eye is Henry Ruggs from Alabama, a receiver from Alabama. He was great at the combine, really rose up the draft picks. They need a deep ball receiver. He can be that guy. He's fast. He's quick. You have a young quarterback who needs some weapons. You're going to go with Drew Lock. I think they could also potentially be in the market for a quarterback if they don't completely believe in Drew Lock.
Yeah.
Jordan Love is the other option here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a run, so now everybody better get one while you can, So those who were kind of on the fence, like, oh, we could use a receiver, or maybe we could use this. Teams that have dual needs, but one of them being a receiver, and if there's a run on receivers, they're all going to jump in and get one now.
Oh, yeah.
Before their favorite one is gone.
At number 16, it's the Atlanta Falcons. And the Atlanta Falcons are salivating right now, and I think they sprint up because Javon Kinlaw, is still on the board. Defensive tackle, one of their needs. They'll go up, they'll grab the cat from South Carolina and be very happy.
Yeah. Yeah, because they need a lot of help on defense. So, and they also need to start looking for the future too. Hopefully in the later rounds they can get like a young quarterback that they can bring along and kind of sit behind old Matty Ice, because he's probably on the sunset of his career. He's got
weapons there though. I mean, too, as well, with Todd Gurley coming aboard, and also, Julio Jones is still there. So
right.
Matt Ryan's got some, and bring a young quarterback to develop with that. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's what I would be doing if I was be them. But then again, nobody ever listens to me. So here we have it.
Next up is the Dallas Cowboys. And have you seen the Dallas Cowboys offseason? It makes no sense. They brought in a lot of players who at one time were suspended by the NFL, and they still haven't given their franchise quarterback the money he's deserved.
Right. So let's give all the former felons a contract, and the guy that's been there just doing his job, doing the right things, showing up every day, taking all the heat.
Hasn't been a problem.
Has not had one single whisper of an issue. No, the heck with that guy. We ain't gonna pay you. Let's tag him.
He was literally passed over twice for his money.
So dumb. So here's the question then. Is Dak Prescott now the Scottie Pippen of the NFL?
You watched a documentary, sir.
I know, and it wasn't about wrestling either.
I don't know. I think he's got to go somewhere else. I really think. If Dak Prescott's not going to get the money he deserves, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear trade me from his team.
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised did they tag him already or no?
Yep. He hasn't signed the tender, though, or he's not going to report. Granted, no one's going to report, but he's not going to report.
I wouldn't either. The heck with them.
I do think the Cowboys, though, have an obsession right now with trying to figure out their defensive line. So there are two possibilities here who are edge rushers that they could add. Clavon Chason from LSU, who I think they go with, or they could go with Yetur Gross-Matos from Penn State. Those are the two edge rushers that I think could be a raw possibility. You're going to have to work with them. They brought in a lot, though. But they saw the Eagles win a Super Bowl a couple years ago with a revolving defensive front, constantly getting fresh legs in there. They saw it up close, and I think they're trying to do that same thing. Chason, I think, fits here with LSU. He's a lanky, athletic guy. He's not lanky, but he's a very athletic, fit guy who I think would fit with the Cowboys.
Yeah, and I think that defensive line by committee actually benefits a lot. I mean, we've seen that at the college level as well. Mm-hmm. You're circling in a platoon of guys, and if you can get – it only works if the level of talent that you are subbing in is at par with the guys you start with. So, if you can bring in all that same level of talent, it'll work for them. And, yeah, I don't see anything wrong with them going defense up front. I mean, other than – they really need to settle a real deal with their quarterback. They don't really have an offensive need.
I think they could also go safety here as well. Defensive back. Xavier McKinley's still on the board on my mock draft, so I think that could be a potential landing spot as well. But I really do think they focus on their defensive front. Moving on to pick number 18, we're now getting into the second picks for these teams. The Miami Dolphins are on the clock. I had them pick Tua earlier. They now need to protect Tua. And with Joshua Jones, the tackle from Houston, still on the board, they gobble him up at 18.
Yep. I can see that. That makes sense.
It's just the best spot for the Dolphins to really help both causes because Jones is a very good tackle. Those tackles, really, you could interchange them depending on who fits your system. Other than Tristan Wirfs, who I think is the clear number one, I think the rest are interchangeable. The Dolphins pick a tackle at 18.
Yep. You pay for the house. You might as well buy the insurance policy now.
Absolutely. Moving on to pick number 19. The Raiders are back on the clock. They pick CeeDee Lamb with their first pick, and now they pick a defender, Xavier McKinley, the safety from Alabama, I think comes off the board here. He's a guy who I think would fit with the Raiders very much. Have protection in the back, need a safety, one of their biggest needs. He falls right to him.
And he's another one of those speed safeties, too. He's not a lay-the-wood safety either. Because that's like that whole defensive concept out of Gruden is, speed kills. He'd rather have him, it's okay to make a mistake only if you're making it at 100 miles an hour,
And the Raiders is also, I mean, Al Davis, rest his soul, but he was also Mr. I want speed.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, that makes sense.
The Jaguars are back on the clock for pick 20. They picked Derek Brown or had Derek Brown fall to them. Here they need to focus on cornerback. That is a need. So I think they do reach a little bit. It's a little reach for A.J. Terrell, the cornerback from Clemson, who had a pick against Ohio State, but it was taken away from him.
It was legit. I saw it.
Ugh. But A.J. Terrell, I think, goes here to the Jaguars. Hopefully they don't upset this cornerback like they did with their last great cornerback.
Yep.
It's really the only thing I can say about the Jags. There's a lot of issues with that team right now.
I feel it.
Moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, with Philly, they need weapons. They were absolutely decimated last year by both drops, Nelson Aguilar, and injuries throughout that team. They were decimated. That's a playoff team if they're not all hurt.
Right.
I truly believe that. I believe they win their they were a playoff team, but they are a playoff contender is what I meant to say. A huge playoff contender if they're healthy.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz doesn't go down in that game. So I think they look for a weapon, and I think a good weapon that is still available at this time is Justin Jefferson, the wide receiver from LSU. I think he fits. I think he's another fast guy. You put him on the team, I think he adds so much. Deshaun Jackson's still there later in his career. You have weapons. You need more for Carson Wentz. I think they go skill here in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. And, they're only one or two key playmakers away. And there's not a whole lot of separation within their division. I mean, the Skins, the Cowboys, and the Giants, you can pretty much cover those teams up with a quarter. They're so close as far as disparity and needs and skill level and talent. There's no clear team that's heading above the others, like in other divisions, so this one or two key pieces here, and they could be running the table in that division, come playoff time.
They're looking for an X factor on their defense who can catch the ball. I mean, Miles Sanders, their running back, who was there, was fantastic in his rookie year. But I think when your best receiver is coming out of your backfield, you have an issue because everyone got hurt and everyone kept dropping the ball last year. Get another weapon for that team. Have people come back healthy. You could be scary next year on the offense.
Yep.
Number 22, it's the Vikings' first pick of this draft. Cornerback is their biggest need. A.J. Terrell went to the Jaguars earlier, so they could be a team to possibly trade up. I think Jalen Jackson, the cornerback from Utah, is a spot here. Xavier Rhodes was gone. Zimmer likes himself some defensive players. I think this makes too much sense. Jalen Jackson, cornerback. I think they go cornerback. They could go edge rusher here early. So Etor Gross-Matos, who is my best edge rusher on the board still, could come off the board here with the Vikings. But I think they go cornerback first because I think it's a bigger need right now.
Right.
Next, the New England Patriots. Doesn't it feel good to not say a pick in the 30s for the New England Patriots? Pick in the 20s for the New England Patriots? Ugh.
Yep.
Everyone, I bet you think you know what I'm going to say here with quarterback. No, I do not think Jordan Love goes here. I think it's a potential, but I do not think he goes here. There is one player in the draft, to me, who has not been picked, who may just be the most New England Patriot mentality that I can think of, and that's A.J. Epinesa, the defensive end from Iowa. To me, just screams New England Patriots. They lost Kyle Van Noy. You bring in A.J. Epinesa. He can fill that spot. He can be very good in that Patriots offense, or Patriots defense, excuse me. Yeah. I think That, and by the way, Bill Belichick has a terrible track record drafting receivers. So I don't think he goes down that path. I think A.J. Epinesa is the pick for the New England Patriots, and I think he fits extremely well up there in Foxborough, Massachusetts.
Yeah, I really look for old Billy to really lean on his defense next year. I think it's easier for him to preach his defense and get that on lockdown than it is probably to get production out of his new look offense. And it's not really a new look, other than it just won't have TB12 running it.
Yeah.
So, but he's shown, like, when Tom Brady was out for those, what was it, Deflategate or whatever that he was suspended for, or something, that he missed like 6 games and they still won.
Yeah, it was 4 games Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett, who I think they could possibly trade back for.
Right.
Were the guys, and they went 3-1, I think, in those 4 games. And also, you look at 2007, I think 2006 or 2007, when Matt Castle went 10-6 with that team, and somehow they didn't make the playoffs at 10-6, and somehow this team made the playoffs that year over them. So he's been able to do it. They like Jared Stidham. Jordan Love's a possibility, but I think they're in love with what they have and have options still out there to trade for.
Yep.
Looking forward to New Orleans Saints. I know everyone keeps saying Jordan Love to the Saints. Jordan Love to the Saints, it makes too much sense, but it doesn't based on how that organization has talked about Taysom Hill. They want Taysom Hill to be their future quarterback. Every single time they talk about Hill, they put a first-round tender on him. They want him to be their quarterback of the future. They chose him over Teddy. They want him to be their quarterback of the future. I think they did their due diligence on Jordan Love, but I think ultimately they don't want to use their first-round pick on a player who they feel they already have a replacement for.
Right.
I think they're going to keep Taysom Hill as the number 2 quarterback on that team. I do not think they draft a quarterback here in the first round. I think they draft who's the best available. That's a pick, and right now the best available, I think, is the linebacker from LSU, Patrick Queen, who they put on their team. And they could go receiver to have another weapon for Drew Brees, but I think Queen's the best available. They're kind of a team that picks the best available. I don't think they're going to go with a quarterback. He's their pick.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, they were making up plays and offensive schemes just to get Hill in the game to play. So, I mean, if you're willing to move that much for your number 2 quarterback to kind of groom him and bring him along, yeah, you're not looking to pick up another quarterback that you yet have to groom. And now this quarterback is what, like a full year behind Hill, if that. So, yeah there's no point. Because anybody beyond this point, and I mean this with the absolute most love, like anybody who's not Burrow or Tungalova is going to need groomed, period. They're going to need work. They're going to have to sit behind somebody because they're just not NFL ready, and then the only knock on Tua is his health. So, but those 2 are NFL ready. Anybody else is at best starting the season at the number 2 roster spot in the depth chart. So if you already have one, why bother?
I agree. At 25, the Vikings are back on the clock. The biggest soap opera outside of Tom Brady in the offseason really kind of was in Minnesota, and it was Stephon Diggs. Complaining, wanting out. Maybe it's actually now down in Jacksonville right now, but it was Stephon Diggs. Diggs is now in Buffalo and very happy about being in Buffalo. And I think with this pick, Brandon Ayuk, the wide receiver from Arizona State, they draft to be the potential replacement for Stephon Diggs.
Right. I can agree. I think that's a good choice for them. Again, like you said at the beginning of the show, this is a very wide receiver heavy draft anyway. So might as well get you some if you need you some.
Ayuk is a guy who's, as of late, has risen back up the draft boards. I think he was coached by Herm Edwards, a former NFL coach at college the last couple of years. So I think that's a wide receiver who's going to be ready for an NFL atmosphere, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And a hard-nosed defensive-minded coach like Herm Edwards was is Mike Zimmer. I think he'll fit in that organization. Adam Thielen needs a new Batman or a new Robin to his Batman, and I think it's Brandon Ayuk. Plus, it's fun to say. Brandon Ayuk.
Ayuk.
So here at 26, the Miami Dolphins are back on the clock. So this was a hard pick for me, not only because of my fandom, but also because there are two potential huge picks here for the Dolphins. They're either going to go running back or they're going to go edge rusher. If they were to go running back, I think Jonathan Taylor, the running back from Wisconsin, is the best running back in this draft. He wouldn't be the one they draft, but I think he should be the one they draft if they pick a running back here. Jonathan Taylor, but I think they focus on their defensive line. Brian Flores loves himself some defense. He's a defensive-minded coach, former Patriots coach, has brought in a lot of former Patriots on the defensive side to that team. They've worked on that defensive line. They were towards the bottom of the league in sacks last year. I think they go edge rusher, and it just happens to be the top edge rusher I have on the board is Yetur Gross-Matos from Penn State, going off the board here to the Miami Dolphins.
See, here I thought for running back, the best available running back, you were going to pick Walter Fletcher out of Ball State because he'd be available. I'm just saying the kid can catch, see holes, very explosive runner, good blocker, stout kid. Just saying.
I think later in the draft, the Dolphins pick a safety out of Edinburgh, Brandon Anderson.
That could happen.
I do think that kid gets drafted. He's very good, probably the best safety in Division II.
Yeah, Mr. Anderson. Okay, well, let's finish this, and then we'll talk about our surprise D2 or non-Power 5 conference picks.
But anyway, Yetur Gross-Matos, he's raw. As a person who watched quite a bit of Penn State football, he is raw, but when he's on, he is unstoppable.
Right.
The Dolphins might shy away too because he had an injury, and I already talked about the Dolphins. When you talk about injuries, they are scared. You know what list when people have injuries, so they could shy away from that. But I think at this point, he's the best edge rusher on the board. You need help on the defensive line. I think he'd fit.
Yep.
And it's also a little wishful thinking, not going to lie.
But you're allowed. I mean, it's your draft. You're allowed to, dream big for your teams, and it so happens that your NFL team lines up with your Division I college team. It's okay.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Seattle has the 27th pick. I think the other reason Miami picks Yetur Gross-Matos with the pick before is because Seattle is chomping at the bit. They need an edge rusher, or they're going to go and re-sign Jadeveon Clowney. They're either going to draft an edge rusher in the first round or go pick up Clowney again.
I think they also need help in the secondary too. To be honest with you, that's where I'm leaning for them to pick up right here.
That's a perfect transition. Thank you for that, because I have them picking Antoine Winfield Jr., the safety out of Minnesota, at this pick.
Okay. That makes sense because, to be honest, if I'm Seattle, your secondary hasn't looked good since you broke up the Legion of Boom. That's just all there is to it. They've been thrown against and for quite a bit. And they've had to lean on their offense, to get them back into games when defense should have been making 3 and outs very easily.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know that their third and long situations as far as getting off the field is not very good. Like it's below 50. I know that.
Not a lot of mock drafts that I looked over had Antoine Winfield Jr. in the first round, but I'm telling you, he's a first-round talent. I watched him disrupt games at Minnesota this year. He is the son of an all-pro NFL cornerback. He's the namesake of that same player. He could move to cornerback if you want to put him at cornerback. He could be a safety. He could be a cornerback. He is a true defensive back. You put him where you want in there. He's a ball hawk if you put him at safety. And that's what Seattle wants. I think if they're trying to rebuild the Legion of Boom, Winfield has to be the player they start with. I think it just makes too much sense, especially if there's no edge rusher that they like on the board. And they can still get Jadeveon Clowney if they pick Winfield here.
Yep.
Moving forward to the Ravens. The Ravens are maybe the hardest team to draft for or to figure out who to pick up.
Well, here's the thing that I believe, is this not the first year that Ozzie Newsome is not making the picks for the Ratbirds?
Yep.
So this is like uncharted territory for them, and I don't know, to be honest with you, okay, I love and I hate Ozzie all in the same breath, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I love Ozzie. Ozzie was a former Brown. Ozzie is a standout, Ring of Honor member, all-time great Cleveland Brown. He just happened to follow that miserable human being out of town when they went to Baltimore, okay? And no, I will not name him. His name to me is worse than Voldemort. No, I will not name him. So,
nice.
But one of the best things that person who will not be named ever did was to bring Ozzie up. And Ozzie started out in scouting and then went from scouting and worked HR and then moved his way into a general manager spot and was a very, very good, keen eye at spotting talent. I mean, you almost have to be for as low as Baltimore has always been picking, and Baltimore's one of these teams, they always build through the draft. They don't bring in a whole ton of free agents. So Ozzie has always hit. So this is a really good, a really high pressure situation for Baltimore, and has Ozzie's wisdom been passed on to the rest of the Ratbird organization?
Well, look, the one position of need that really stands out for the Ravens seems to be linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
Kenneth Murray, the linebacker from Oklahoma, is still available at this time. I think this is another best available player pick, and it just happens to line up with maybe a need. Kenneth Murray is a player, the linebacker from Oklahoma, who I think his tape makes him look better than he may actually be. And that's not a diss. Well, it is a diss, not on him, but on how bad the Oklahoma defense actually is and was this past year, that he looked unreal at times this past year. And I think a lot of that has to do with what was around him. But if Kenneth Murray can perform the way he did in some of those games with good talent around him, that is a steal at that pick.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think you're right.
Next up was the Titans. The Tennessee Titans, I think their biggest need is in, again, the defensive backfield. I think they go cornerback Tavon Doss here from Alabama is the pick for the Titans. They could go defensive line as well.
Yeah, I see them going more on the backfield, on the back end, than they do up front.
Could be a receiver, too. Do not sleep on that. Speaking of receiver, the next team on the board is the Green Bay Packers.
And they need a receiver.
They need receivers.
Aaron Rodgers, 3 of them.
Help. I think T. Higgins is the pick here. The receiver from Clemson, he's tall. I have it listed. He's 6'3" and a decent size receiver. Aaron Rodgers would love T. Higgins. T. Higgins was the standout in college for that team for Clemson, receiver-wise, not named Mr. Ross. I think when you look at his production and when you look at the fact that he had a stellar quarterback in college, Aaron Rodgers is going to love himself some Higgins. T.
Mm-hmm.
Higgins here at the pick for the Green Bay Packers.
Yep, I fully agree.
Moving on. So what was my big rule here, Tubby, for my mock draft?
No trades?
Yeah. San Francisco has the pick, but I mocked a trade.
Oh, my word.
Why? Because I think it'd be a disservice to not have this player in the first round. I also think this makes actual sense for a trade. And they haven't had a first-round pick, this team I have up here. The Indianapolis Colts, who, by the way, have the second or third pick of the second round. So they only are trading up a couple of spots.
They pick number 34. They are the second.
So the second
overall in the second round.
In the second round. So they're not moving up that much.
No.
I think they move up to pick 31 and pick Jordan Love, quarterback out of Utah State. He can sit behind Philly Rivers for a year, develop under a quarterback who's a borderline Hall of Famer. Develop. I think, as I already said, I think Jacoby Brissett's on his way to New England. So I think if you sit Jordan Love behind Phillip Rivers, I think it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, it makes sense because you got to figure that Phillip Rivers is a good mentor. I mean, he's got 98 kids? Yeah. You know what I mean? So he's used to that mentoring, parenting type role. Mm-hmm. He should be able to bring him along pretty easily.
And I know you are not big on Jordan Love, but I think he has the potential, if he's developed correctly, to be a good quarterback in this league.
Yeah, I mean, if they, like I said, I think one of my biggest complaint about him was that trying to bring him on too early. Like, if you're trying to pin your hopes and dreams on this kid, he's not the kid to do it. You need somebody that he can sit behind for a year, get a coach to work with him. He has some stuff he needs to work out. But, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. As long as he can sit for that entire year and not touch him for that entire year. If he's called into service early, I think this kid's going to break.
It's going to be interesting to see what Indy does in this draft. I broke my own rules, but Jordan Love's going to be drafted in the first round. It's going to be a team probably to trade back in to draft him, but I really do think he goes in this first round.
Right.
And the final pick, the Super Bowl champs, the Chiefs, really they have a lot of options here with this final pick. My pick for them is to, not that he needs it, but get more weapons for Patrick Mahomes. I think they pick running back out of Georgia, DeAndre Swift, here with this pick. Get Patty Mahomes, a great running back. Swift. Georgia is a breeding ground for running backs right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think Swift is the next great one to come into the NFL. I think that's a perfect way to end the first round with them getting another weapon, not that they need it.
Right. All right. So now that we're in overtime, Drew, let's talk about our friends, people we know who are eligible for the NFL draft. And we mentioned two of them so far. Mm-hmm. We mentioned Walter Fletcher out of Ball State, running back, spent 4 years at Edinburgh, graduated Borough, still had a year of eligibility, was a transfer student to Ball State, went up to D1, and really he didn't really surprise me because I know the level of work that he puts in, mm-hmm. but he showed out at the D1 level.
And it's Ball State, and you didn't say balled out. I'm a little disappointed.
Well, I was kind of laying that one up there for you, buddy. I wanted you to and you just whipped on it, but whatever.
Right. No, but look, Walter Fletcher, the thing that's going to stink with him is He wasn't the starter this year for Ball State. They had another guy who was their starter. He was really the come in and switch of pace type of back. They're going to have to go back to his D2 tape to really see him in his best form. And this is a weapon-heavy draft with the running backs. I think if he gets drafted, it's going to be late. But if he doesn't get drafted and a team signs him, they're going to sign a great player, let me tell you. It's going to be a steal if he doesn't end up hearing his name called. Again, I think the smaller schools are going to be in a little more trouble than normal this year, just based on the circumstances and having a lot of that scouting time where you find those smaller school athletes will be less then, because the scouts didn't have the opportunities that they normally had in this time. So I think the smaller school players will suffer because of it. But I'm telling you, any team who gets Walter Fletcher is going to get a guy.
Yeah, they're going to get a guy. And you know what? And that's the thing is he can fit. I can see him fitting on almost any NFL roster. You know, he may not be your number one guy, but as your 2 or your 3 back, he fits that perfectly. And I think after like 1 year in the NFL, he could be your number 1 running back.
So he could be a guy. I really do think he could be a guy like this year with the Eagles with Boston Scott, who came out of nowhere due to some injuries, who could find himself in the starting. I think he'll be a practice squad guy for the very first year, just because he's a young running back, and that's what happens if you're maybe a not drafted young running back. But I think his work ethic will get him at least that spot. I really do.
Yeah.
I think he could be a guy like Boston Scott last year for the Eagles, who, due to some injuries, will move up and make an impact for a team.
I really hate to say this, but where I could really see him going and doing really well is Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Just simply because of how decimated they are at running back. And they got Connors coming back now, who's a really good kid, a local Erie kid, Pitt kid. So I think Fletch could do really well there. You know, as far as their style of offense that they run there in Pittsburgh, he could do really well there. You know, and maybe another one, maybe the Redskins, maybe in the DC area. You know, that might be a good spot for him. But let's also give some airtime too to our buddy, our friend, Mr. Anderson, if you please, the safety out of Edinburgh, who is just an absolute force, a ball hawk that you and I had the pleasure to watch basically his entire college career.
So I was there for his first couple of years, for his first year, I think. And he was great as a freshman and just kept developing. I think he is a guy, I really think, because of a defensive back, and especially in the late rounds, everyone wants defensive backs, that he could hear his name called. And I will lose it if I hear Edinburgh University called on that broadcast. But really, the things that Brandon Anderson does well, I think, are the intangible things. Mm-hmm. I think his leadership style, I think the way he really helped a team that went through ebbs and flows in his time at Edinburgh. You get that kind of player in an NFL locker room. He's another guy who I think I think he could be a late round pick. Let me first say that. But if he's not, he's a guy who will make a practice squad.
Yeah. Yeah,
100%. At the very least. I really do think he can be an impact player. I want to say argue, but granted, I didn't watch a multitude of Division II football this year as I would have liked, but he might have been the best safety in Division II. And if that means anything, I think he should be drafted. With these two guys, with Fletcher and Anderson, the other teams really to look out for if they don't get drafted are the local ones. So a Pittsburgh could go after Brandon Anderson, a Cleveland could go after Brandon Anderson, a Buffalo could go after Brandon Anderson because it's close, and their scouts who scout close to that area are probably the most or have seen
Right.
the most. A player like Fletcher, who has played his last year in Indianapolis or near Indianapolis, I think the Colts could be a team to grab Walter Fletcher.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing is like with all the, because they're doing like telescouting, right? So all the scouts are reviewing as much tape as they can from their assigned areas, you know? So since they're reviewing a lot more tape, it may actually help some of these smaller guys because, yeah, they may not have been like in the stands watching the game live as it happened, but because they're getting matched on a level where you're just looking at tape side by side, a lot of these smaller school guys may stand out. And, you know, guys like Fletch and guys like Mr. Anderson may actually benefit from that.
You know,
Who would normally get lost in the stack, you know, like when you're going around and you're doing all of these combines and media days and, you know, pro days and stuff, you know, how they invite, like, you know, big time quarterback might have like his pro day at, say, you know, Penn State or whatever. And then like all the other local guys that are trying to get onto an NFL team show up to his pro day and work out with him at that pro day. And that's how they get seen. So with the elimination of pro days, they have to rely more on tape. So it may, you know, may level the playing field a little bit. Might be, maybe they stick out on tape. Depends on how it's cut and edited.
That's the other thing too, like, because a lot of, I think the things that make both of these guys stand out are the things that you're not going to necessarily see on tape. You get in the other things. So I want them both to have good careers. I'm fans of them. I'm rooting for them. It just kind of stinks that they're a part of this year, which has been just uprooted
right
completely.
Well, I don't know. I mean, one can only hope, I guess. So I guess I'll just have to pay attention like I never had been before to like Saturday's draft and watch it all the way out to the 7th round and see what happens.
Dark horse pick of the draft. I said it last week. I'm going to say it again this week. Whatever team gets Jalen Hurts, I think will get a steal at quarterback.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Tubby, that's going to do it for us today.
And we made it through draft day.
Yes, indeed. Draft day is coming up. We'll see how incorrect I am.
Right. So we'll do a draft recap the next time you see us. We'll also try to dive into a Last Dance recap. Simply because I was backstory on Tubby. Tubby was living in the greater Chicago area in '97. I was at Great Lakes, Illinois, which is like the Navy training base, while this entire season was going on. So like a lot of it is bringing back memories of me and hanging out in Chicago and the good times there. And I will try to tell some pretty decent PG stories from that era the next time
and
we
his
see each other.
His lower third will also say former Chicago resident.
Yeah, also former Chicago resident.
All right, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.